Welcome to the Lost Tracks podcast. I'm Jesse Bass, your host. The Lost Tracks is an archaeological journey through the world of lost and undiscovered music. Today we sit down with Marc Davis, founder of Black Pegasus Records, and explore Chicago's underground music scene of the 80s and 90s.
The burnout assassin, my pockets keep on passing. A cash flow, it's called a buyer with the bro. The day to get paid in the shade, so I fade to my crib. I play some tracks, I grab my sacks, I take a look, I peep, ayo, listen. Did I mention what I'm saying is a mission, a prescription, an addiction, a crazy affliction? I'm chilling out and getting clout, doing bids for the rhymes I told. So old, they got mold, I won't fold, but damn, I still haven't sold. Time to step up and get my say on the day. I'm getting green. Some call me Mr. Smoking Fiend. I'm just a kid in the inner city haze. Mixing up a storm for your brothers.
This is a track called Burnout Assassin. It's from the Galaxy Rays EP by the Chicago rap group East of the Rock. For over a decade, Marc has been gracing listeners with new and unreleased music just like this. Early Chicago hip-hop is his bread and butter, but his label Black Pegasus also features house, funk, and disco. A variety of music that reflects his coming of age as a DJ in the momentous world of Chicago's underground party scene of the 80s and 90s.
I'm definitely a record connoisseur. I love vinyl. I love rare, unreleased vinyl. I've always believed no matter when, the song was created, the first time you hear it, it's new music. So that's my passion. I'm into that. And it's what drives me.
Galaxy Rays was a game changer for Marc. It was the second hip-hop release on his label and came after a project he did with Ultramagnetic MCs, a hardcore hip-hop collective made up of Ced G, Kool Keith, TR Love, and DJ Mo Love.
And this is when the internet was going on. And it was strictly vinyl and some limited CDs, but it put me on the map, put the label brand on the map. It was with credible, it's Ultramagnetic, so it was credible. And then from there, I went and put out some guys that I was friends with. One of the guys I grew up with, named Marco the Mad Thinker, rest in peace, he passed like about a year ago. He was in a group called East of the Rock. And East of the Rock had like a test press in like 95, like a real limited test press. I think they did 50. And it never jumped off, but it was a great EP. I love that. I went and got it, and I pressed it up and put it out officially on Black Pegasus. That took it to another level. So a lot of the Chicago artists, the hip-hop artists, at least in the early 90s, like I said, we didn't have record labels, so they would press up a certain amount and try to take it to a limited amount of record stores out here, but they never got national distribution. So it was like, those records never really launched. So I put that out. I was on a mission to put the records out, but I like I said, I got a kick out of like a personal fulfillment of putting out grails, and these records were grails, and there was never 100 copies of these records, the OGs. There was not even that many. So it was just like, this record needs to be put out properly. And I was part of that scene, and I had those records. So I was like, and I contacted artists and said, you want to do this? Yeah. So that's how I went. So it wasn't like just I'm not some just reissue guy. No, it was never that, But it was definitely the stuff I had access to that I felt needed some life. This is real for me. This is not for play. This is just something I do. It's not something I think about. It's just what I do and what I'm into.
Marc was young when his passion for music started to take shape. He fondly remembers his mother's smooth Motown records while they waited for the bus, and his father's deep respect and knowledge of jazz and its plethora of underground artists. When he started collecting records himself, he gravitated towards sounds like Love Sensation by Lolita Holloway and Trans Euro Express by Kraftwerk. From the jump, his music stylings were eclectic, but curated. It wasn't long after beginning his collection when he started to train as a DJ. In fact, he was only in the 6th grade and didn't even have his own set of turntables. But he was drawn to the craft and found a way nevertheless.
And so I would go to a couple friends' houses. One of my friends, Johnny Walker, I would go by his house, and his mom would let me in on a Saturday morning. He'd still be in the bed. I'd go turn the equipment on. Because, I was a good kid. I wasn't going to do anything wrong or steal or any of that type of stuff. So I was able to start practicing. And that became a passion. So they kind of respected me. The people I came around respected me because I was young and like I wanted to know. So I used to carry some crates for a couple of my friend DJ Tony Smooth Smith. He was a dope DJ. And I would go to some of the parties with him and my guy Steve Mathis. And they would I would just bring the records and stand and watch, you know, and just kind of hang around them. And then there was another legendary DJ. He wasn't even really legendary at the time, but he was so different and eccentric. And he I always respected him. It's my boy Sadar Barhar. So Sadar, if you know who Sadar is, he's crazy with it. And that's like my big brother. You know what I mean? So yeah, there were people that took me under their wings. You know, it wasn't necessarily, okay, I'm about to school you on everything, but you just kind of watched it. And I remember when I first figured out how to match the beats up, just, you know, matching the kick, you know, the snare and the kick and the kick together, and knowing how to try to work the pitch control like a stick shift, you know, and learning your records. When does it change? When does the break come in? When does the drummer's leg speed up? When does the drummer's leg speed down? You know, slow down. So these are intricate things that take time. And if you're not really around it, no one just gives you the fundamentals of that, then you have nothing to strive for. So I think that kind of schooled me and just learning, just being around that, you know.
Marc was raised in a time and culture where DJs were looked at as kings. The responsibility of rocking a dance floor wasn't trusted to just anyone. For context, Chicago DJs were pioneers of an entirely new sound and party experience. Of course, I'm talking about house. At first glance, house and hip-hop appear to be at odds with each other. However, the more Marc spoke of the two styles, the more I saw them interconnecting. Even if the culture surrounding the two clashed, the music at the core of the movement had an uncanny ability to unite anyone on a dance floor. House originated in the early and mid-'80s. Frankie Knuckles and Ron Hardy are two of the style's founding fathers, but the entire list of contributors is too long to list here. The style was created and popularized mostly by gay black men, but it attracted crowds from all demographics, even the world of hip-hop. Spaces like the Warehouse and Music Box were ground zero for house music. The influence of these parties would eventually extend beyond the city limits of Chicago and impact dance culture across the entire world. At a local level, these legendary parties inspired up-and-coming DJs like Marc. He saw the power a DJ could wield and wanted to feel that for himself.
You know, early I'm just hearing a lot of stuff on the radio, going to people's houses. I had never really been to a party before. I was too young, and I really wasn't supposed. My friend took me to the Music Box, he had a membership. I wasn't really supposed to go to that party. I was too young, and there was drugs at that party too, right? And, you know, no disrespect to anybody, but, you know, it was an alternative lifestyle some of the people were a part of. See, Ron Hardy was slightly different from Frankie because Frankie's party was predominantly a mostly black, kind of bourgeois gay crowd, right? So some people would go to that party, they would come back and be like, yo, man, the music is banging, but it's just a little bit too gay for me, right? No disrespect to anybody. I'm just stating the facts of what was going on. But when Ron Hardy came out, Ron Hardy was kind of more from the hood. He was gay, but for some strange reason, he attracted a rebellious straight crowd. They just swarmed in because he was so experimental with what he was doing. You know, he's playing helicopter sound effect records in the Music Box. So if you can imagine a big tweeter system and big bottoms, and you just hit a propeller from a helicopter coming in out of nowhere. You're looking up in the air thinking somebody's getting ready to land. But he was doing this live. He would play that and bring in some kind of crazy acid track and to go ape shit up in the bar party. He was playing records backwards. He was just doing a lot of experimental things. He didn't care if some such is gay. He's rocking the party. And there's still girls out there, so you're gonna dance. So, you know what I mean? That was all part of it. But it did get a negative stigma at one time, especially with people that's not part of the culture. So when you're part of the culture, you see what's going on. You know, they got ex-gangbangers in the party. You know, that was going on. Yet, you know, all that was going on at the party. People were retiring, went out there gangbanging, but they came to hit Ron Hardy, they came to hit Frankie, you know, because it's the music. You know what I mean? That supersedes.
Marc dove further and further into the world of music. He forged lasting relationships with other like-minded musicians in his area. This included visionary artists No ID and Common, who both have releases under Marc's Black Pegasus label. This first-hand experience in Chicago's underground music scene is what sets Black Pegasus apart from other labels. There's an authenticity and cultural component behind every release, each record layered with history and significance, comparable to what someone might find in a time capsule. And on top of all that, the music is tremendous. In the record collecting space, projects of this caliber are referred to as holy grails. This next song is a Paul C remix of a classic Ultramagnetic MC's track. It's called Ain't It Good to You.
And we're here to give you another one. Back again to crush equilibrium. Hi-hat, bass time and snare. I got your girl ready to stare. Get back, ear canals are devastated.
Perpetrated for those who never made it.
Suck it up, you played it close and now you hate it.
Underrated.
Baking it, taking it to the top. Rock, lock, until you drop. Get ready, cause we'll never stop damaging. In other words, be rude to you. But yo, ain't it good to you?
I play hard. I like a lot of tempo. It's simple when I do the limbo. Tango, Latin hustle. Jump down and flex my muscle. Also rotate my torso. Freaking it on a girl's behind. And other ducks I left behind my mind. As I redesign another line that's genuine. So fine to be in the action. A cool keep the main.
So me and TR love Ultramagnetic. You know, I got a great rapport with all of those guys, but you know, he's a cassette collector, and so is Mo Love. They archived all their stuff, just a bunch of stuff. So he sent me some stuff, and it was an Ain't It Good to You, just like on Critical Beatdown, but it had a slight different edit, different drops in the record. I was like, oh, this is ill. He's like, oh yeah, Paul did that. I'm like, Paul C? He's like, yeah, Paul C did that. I'm like, oh my God. This is crazy. So I don't know if you guys know who Paul C is, but if you don't know who Paul C is, you gotta look him up. He's a legend, you know. So he worked with Ultramagnetic. Paul C was one of the funkiest white boys ever in hip hop, and so he did some amazing stuff. And I heard it, I liked it. I was like, I need to do a 7-inch of this. Forget putting it out on 12 because they had an instrumental. And so there was a guy I met in the UK who owned a record store in Northampton. You know, just kind of got cool with him, and I was, you know, I bounced a few ideas. So I was telling him, I said, man, I got this joint I want to put on a 7-inch. And he said, well, what's the story behind it? And I told him it was on a reel and it came on a cassette. And he said, well, I don't think it's going to do that well. I said, huh? He's like, well, I can see if it was on an acetate. And he kind of like, I'm going to say he hated on the idea, but then after that, he said, why don't you send it to me, let me hear it? And I said, nah, I'm not sending it to you. So I forgot my superpowers for a second. I'm like, I know what this sounds good. This is dope. I don't need to send him this. So I went on and pressed it up. Yo, I dropped that record on Record Store Day. I forgot whatever year it came out. It was on a Saturday, and I had a late post on Facebook or something, whatever. Man, that record flew.
Building a notoriety in the music business doesn't happen overnight. It takes persistence and a lot of rejection. But just like his passion for DJing, Marc paved a way for himself in this fiercely competitive industry. Before starting Black Pegasus, Marc was an executive producer for a couple records with 2 different labels, Pimp the Industry and Funky Ass Records. These experiences ingrained the basics of the business into his skill set. Marc took this knowledge and started Black Pegasus Records in 2006. His first release was a self-produced house track called Trust in Me, a fitting title for an aspiring entrepreneur.
I had my mixing equipment, I was doing my thing, and then eventually someone broke in my house and stole my equipment, right? And so I shut down for some years. I was still buying records, collecting tapes, but I kind of just left it alone. So my good friend EV, DJ Spin, I kind of started living through him. And so I started going on the club circuit with him and the bar circuit in Chicago. And then that's how I started networking, because I wanted to find out the business aspect of the music game. Promotions, all that was part of the journey. And then I got back into DJing again. And then eventually that led me to going overseas to London to go DJ for the first time. I lived in London for 3.5 years. Lived in London, I lived in Guildford, Surrey. And so while I was there was a distribution company called Amato, owned by a guy named Mario. So Mario allowed me to do a P&D deal with him. And that's how I did the Pimp the Industry record. Pimp the Industry label. I was just did a one-off record with them. So I was in that world. I was shopping demos around. I went to every record label in London and got rejected. I went to every label in Paris and got rejected. I hooked up with Thomas and Galter from Daft Punk. I know those guys. I used to play with DJ Falcon. So I know Thomas and Gee Man. So eventually I got the record picked up. And closed the deal for like $34,000 at that time. And so my perseverance of going to record labels, getting rejected, and then figuring out how to press the record up on my own. You know, I went to every record. Imagine going to every record label and they like your stuff, but nobody wants to sign it.
As a label owner myself, it's comforting to hear stories that reflect my own journey. They act almost like reassurance that I'm on the right path. While our journeys aren't exactly parallel with one another, my career in this industry also started with contributing to other labels before venturing off to do my own thing. Like everything in life, you're bound to experience trial, error, and growth. At the time of this recording, I had just released my first project under Skull Valley Records, and I'm working on my second. One day I hope to have a catalog of music at the caliber of Black Pegasus. Until that day, I'm taking the stories and experiences from conversations like these and applying them to my own process.
So I hooked up with Steady Serve. He had another test press. He had another situation in the 90s. It was Andy C. from Chicago, who's done a bunch of stuff, and Tony Nimble, and Steady Serve. And Steady Serve gave me two of the tracks that didn't make the original press. Prayed for the pressing myself. I went straight to Japan with it. And I think they hit me with, it was not much, but I think they took a few copies. I got a check for like $1,400 or something, straight directly to me via PayPal. That was a good feeling. So it changed the whole everything. Now the trajectory has changed now. Now I'm like, okay, now I'm going to really do this, because now I'm contacting the buyers. Not only contacting the buyers are contacting me. So now it's a shift. You know, I think anytime you're doing business, you just need to know who the retail store. I got a nice database now that, I just know. I know who the buyers are. Okay, I got a buyer in Dubai. I got a buyer, two buyers in Japan. I got, 4 or 5 buyers in Sweden. Your database, and I became more immersed in that world by doing it this way. Hands on. It's funny too, man, because sometimes you get stereotyped. I don't know if they're not used to black guys walking in with records or talking to them, but I've seen people humble themselves when they find out what I've done and what I'm into, and it's kind of fulfilling, because now some of these people I've turned into great relationships. Sometimes, and this happens quite often, I'll go to a record store and I'm maybe just even shopping for records, and I'm talking to the manager, the owner, the buyer, whatever, and I look up, I'm in there a whole hour and a half, and I need to go. The conversation is flowing so well, and this has happened multiple times.
Marc's natural ability to form deep relationships has been instrumental in his success. Some of his biggest releases come from decade-long friendships that date back to his childhood. Here's a classic example of what I'm talking about. This was a previously unreleased track from one of the industry's most accomplished musicians. It's an alternative edit off his first LP, Can I Borrow $1? Charms Alarm, by the one and only Common.
How many licks does it take to make it into the middle? It's a riddle with the little dribble and a jab. I got with the gift. It's your birthday cause you're getting lit. Watch this magic trick on the geek stick. I'ma turn this thing into a there goes the sounds along. I do it a physical form and really twist your arm. Song on the step to the F on the tip. By my feet a sip of sucker. It's the happy common sense hour. The fun time, in fact the prime time for the prime. Cause there'll be rhymes before it's time. So as I wind up, I won't walk and talk and cheat. And back a little leak, I was only taught that don't eat. And with the heat, all the ass drop of a gum, I'll be young, I'm a young punk, over till he tough a sucker is the word for today. Can you say S to the U to the C to the K A? Word to baby, suckers, no now they want to bother fools be getting screwed and blow pop pop. They live and die and suck, you wanna be is over the drug hill, but don't y'all deal so from 9 to silver, talk along. Why? Cause it's blow pop time. Why? Cause it's blow pop time. Now here's a sucker wanna lick. Why? Cause it's blow pop time. Cause it's blow pop time. Now check it out.
Yeah, so that was a special song special release because I grew up with Common. It's a good friend of mine. And I had the first pressing of his first album, Can I Borrow a Dollar? And I had it on cassette. It wasn't a record label cassette. It was a cassette that I had recorded off the master dad or something. And I had that and I held on to it for like 30 years. Damn near. And I went to one of he had a festival out in Chicago called R-Fest. He shut it down now, but I went, hung out with him backstage, and I was like, yo, Rosh, man, I want to put this record out. I got the original John Salon. And he was like, you got that? I was like, yeah. And I said, I got the UAC freestyle. He's like, yo, put it out. And when you get it ready, let me know. So I said, let me start up this, I put up like a little series called the 7 Cent series, dedicated to, his brand and who he is rather. And I pressed it up on yellow vinyl, and he shot a video promo for me, which I was very grateful for. And I said, let me just push the envelope, and I sold that record for $40 a piece. It flew.
Today, Marc and Black Pegasus have inked a deal with Mr. Bongo. Their first joint release was an amazing 12-inch from January 2023 titled Disco Gospel. That record also happens to be the first time I was introduced to Marc's work. In collaboration with Mr. Bongo, Marc aims to reach a larger audience for himself and his label's artists. I asked him about the future of Black Pegasus and his deal with Mr. Bongo, and this is what he had to say.
But yeah, no, I just, I had, like the indie stuff is great, right? I love my label, Black Pegasus, right? But I know I needed to do more. I needed to DJ, get my bookings up. And so when I was living in London, one of the record shops that I used to go to all the time was Mr. Bongo. That was a legendary record store in London. Brazilian funk records to independent hip hop to disco, all that stuff. And I knew who the guys were. So right before the pandemic, I had a conversation with Mr. Bongo about working with them. And at first I really slightly skeptical because I said, well, what if the relationship doesn't work out and I'm giving you the information on these songs? It might sound kind of petty, but in that world that I live in, sometimes you can't get all the math out of these songs, the label, who the artist is, etc. But we started talking more, and that's how that came about. So that's how I'm doing a deal with Mr. Bongo. And pretty much right now, I got a great relationship so far with these guys. And they're into the music. They're into everything I'm into. And they have a kind of a machine, I need a slight machine behind me in order for me to really do what I want to do and be happy about it. So I'm going to come back to the Black Pegasus label and everything, but, as of right now, I got another release coming out with them. I got Shy Tallow Part 2, so I don't know if you see the record I put out, Shy Tallow, but I got a Part 2 coming. And it's going to blow the first one out the box.
In July of 2023, Marc released his second record with Mr. Bongo, a 7-inch featuring 2 unreleased tracks by the luminary Don Blackman. For anyone not familiar with Don Blackman's work, he's an iconic musician and producer from New York. Collectors jump at the opportunity to own one of his records. His music reaches audiences across jazz, hip-hop, soul, and funk. His career started in the early 70s when he played for Parliament, Earth, Wind & Fire, and Roy Ayers. In 1982, he released his self-titled magnum opus. Unfortunately, in 2013, at the age of 59, Don lost his battle with cancer.
And somehow I ended up contacting Irene Blackman, which is Don Blackman's daughter. And she says, yo, you need to holler at my brother. So I spoke to Kyle, So he sent me some unreleased stuff, and I was like, yo, these 2 joints are banging. Other stuff is good, but I said I like to do this. So I said I want to bring Tone Be Nimble to the table. So I want to do the edit with him, and so me and Tone went and chopped it up together, and then I sent it back to Kyle, and like I said, the deal didn't go through. So last summer, I went out there to Rock the Bells hip hop show to hang out with Ultramagnetic, and then I run into Kyle just organically, and we talk, and I say, yo, I got a situation with a label named Mr. Bongo. They might be kind of cool with it. So I had already, the gospel record was just already getting the test presses and all that, and so he saw all of that, and then I set up a meeting, and the rest is history.
Here's a track from deep in the Don Blackman vault. Say You'll Be Mine. As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you enjoy what you've heard, don't forget to like and subscribe and share with your friends. This podcast was co-created and produced by myself and Ryan Farrell. Better preserved than forgotten.